Welcome to Jewish Midlife. I'm Devara Krasniansky, and in this episode, we're talking about organizing and decluttering our stuff with Rebekah Saltzman of BalaganBeGone. By the time we reach midlife, most of us have accumulated a lot of stuff. And even if it's organized, it's still a lot of stuff, and all that can clutter our homes and even our minds. We might have our stuff, our kids' stuff, and sometimes even stuff we inherited. In other words, lots of stuff. Some of it we need, but much of it we hold on to just in case, or they're things that we haven't gotten around to sifting through in years. Rebekah shares some important practical tips and mindset shifts about holding on to or passing on our stuff. She guides us on what to keep, what to let go of, and how to store everything efficiently so we can find them quickly when we need them. We explored various scenarios like holding on to our kids' belongings, saving items for grandchildren, and what makes sense to buy in bulk even when there's fewer people at home, and what doesn't. Enjoy the episode. So, Rebekah, I'm so excited to be talking to you about organization, about what to keep, what not to keep, downsizing. There's so much going on in midlife. We've accumulated so much stuff, whether it's our stuff or our kids' stuff. So what to keep, what not to keep, how to keep it. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this. So before we even get into the topic, can you talk a little bit about what you do professionally and all about BalaganBeGone? So let's go.
Sure. So BalaganBeGone was started in 2012 after I read a book called Zero Waste Home. And I read this book, and this woman produces a mason jar, like a 1 quart or 1 liter jar of trash every year. And I'm like, how could you possibly do that? But she did it. And I read the book and I'm like, this is crazy. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, actually, it's not so crazy. Organization is not just about putting lots of things in lots of boxes. It's actually reducing what you don't need and curating your best collection of stuff so that you can find what you need when you need it and you have what you need. And once I started using that theory, I had it was a life-changing event, because I started out working as an organizer, and I thought that everything just needs to go in a box. It doesn't matter how much you have as long as it's in a compartment and you know where the compartment is. But really, we can't just have lots of compartments full of things, because after a while we keep adding to it. And if we never look through it and let go of things, it just keeps adding and growing and growing. And we're never taking a step back to see if we actually need all these things to actually grow. And or at all, just even to stay the same, do we need all these things? Because sometimes we outgrow things, right? And we don't need them. And once I realized that you don't have to keep lots of stuff and that you don't need more stuff to be happy, it was a life-shifting event for me. And it's something that I changed over for my customers, my clients, and it's how I live my life also. I have found that curating the best collection of stuff means that you can have time to do all the other things that you want. Because if you don't have a curated collection of things, what happens is you become a slave to your things. And then you end up working for your things instead of your things working for you. And this is not the way that we're supposed to live. Pirkei Avot talks about, more possessions, more worry, number one. And it also says that possessions need to serve their purpose or they have no purpose. And I think that this wisdom is very important to how we move forward in our day-to-day Jewish life. And sometimes we lose track of that because we live in an abundant society, a very abundant society. And while abundance is definitely a Jewish ideal, the consumerism surrounding it is not. And I think that we have to course correct so that we can live our best life. And so I help Jewish families all over the world declutter and get organized. And that's what I do. And that's how I got there.
So wonderful. So let's talk about it from the realm of midlife, kind of all the stuff that we've accumulated midlife, kind of we hit, say, 40, 50, and we have 20 years worth of adult stuff or more. Sometimes we even bring our kids' stuff into our own childhood stuff with us into our life. So when you say curated, what are we talking about? Like, there's so much stuff, but what would be in a nice curated collection?
Okay, so there are two in the midlife journey, I think that there are two groups of people. There's the group of people who like got married and lived in the same house for, I mean, personally, I'm almost 43. I've been married for almost 22 years. I've lived in 3 houses with my husband. But there are some people who are at that similar milestone and who've lived in 1 house. And I think that that actually makes a really big difference, how many times you moved and how long you've lived someplace. Because the longer you live someplace, the easier it is to accumulate without noticing. But when you're moving, you notice the accumulation more, and it's easier to let go of things because you don't want to pay to move things that you don't need. So I think if you can separate those two groups of people, then it's easier to sort of understand what a curated collection would be. If you've lived in a house for so long, you think to yourself, well, I'm living here. This is my forever house. Like I'm going to continue to live here and I have the space. So I'm just going to hold on to things because just in case, right? This is a statement I hear all the time. It's useful just in case. I might need it just in case, right? But the people who have moved or who have smaller homes, let's say, or even if they don't have a small home, but they have a lot of people living in their home, then they realize more usually that they can't keep everything and that it's not cost effective or worthwhile to keep all the things that they have. And when they're no longer using something, they let it go. And I think that while that's a really good start, most people aren't totally honest about how much they actually need to let go, and they still keep more than they need to, even if they don't have the space or if they're moving in a like they're in a situation where they shouldn't be taking everything with them, but they are. So I think that there's a difference between those two groups of people, but in either group, you should only keep what is serving you. And when you're a religious family, you have a lot of things that you wouldn't have if you weren't religious. I mean, right off the bat, you wouldn't have 2 sets of dishes. You wouldn't have a Shabbos set of dishes. You wouldn't have Pesach dishes. You probably wouldn't have candlesticks or a challah board or a challah knife or challah covers or any of the things that we use weekly or even annually, menorahs, Sukkot supplies, right? Like you wouldn't have any of those things if you weren't religious. So right off the bat, we have more stuff than most people might because we have all these extra articles. If you want to, I'm not suggesting every year go out and get a new Chanukiah. That is absolutely not what I am suggesting at all. And I'm not suggesting going out and buying a new sukkah every year. If you use something annually, you should keep it. But when you're choosing what to put away, it needs to be thoughtful. If you haven't used it in your sukkah in 3 years, don't keep it. If it's not in good condition, don't keep it. If a Chanukiah is broken, don't keep it. If you're not using the Pesach dishes, don't keep them, right? And the same is true with the stuff that you use all the time. If you are not reading books, do not keep them. If you are not using them for reference, do not keep them. If you are not wearing clothes, don't keep them. Keeping them for the just in case is not helpful because there's no guarantee that when just in case comes, you'll be able to access that stuff. It's all up to God. And if he wants you to have it, you'll have it. And if he doesn't want you to have it, you won't have it. So why not live with less and not have to worry about so much stuff?
Okay, so then a question comes up for like gift wraps and things like that. When we moved and I actually got rid of, I used to have a collection of gift bags and gift ribbons just in case I needed it, just in case. But I think it was a just in case I use it like, 15, 18 times a year. And then when we moved, I didn't take any of that. And all of a sudden I needed to give a gift and I couldn't just run to the store. So there is a certain amount of
What did
just
you
in
do?
case, or is that a category of not just in case, I do use it.
Okay, wait. What did you do in that situation?
I brought the bottle of wine without a bag, and it's not the way I normally would have done it. I just walked in with the
Okay.
wine.
Was that terrible?
It wasn't terrible. I'm here to talk about it, but it's not the way I normally would have done it. So
Okay. So the just in case happened and you didn't have what you thought you needed, but you didn't need it anyways. It wasn't ideal, but it was fine.
okay,
So I think it's about shifting our perspective on things. Like, is it good enough? Because so often we're marred, especially at this age, we're like, I just want everything to be perfect, right? And we know deep in our heart that it can't all be perfect, but we want to strive for perfection because maybe our kids are a little bigger, we have a little more time. I don't any of those reasons, but we can let go of that needing to be perfect. We are not perfect. Only Hashem is perfect. And we're always where we're supposed to be. And so if we don't have what we think we need, I challenge you to look at the situation again and see if that's actually what you need.
Okay, then similarly, I used to have a small collection of like gifts. If I was going to be a guest somewhere, I would have like a few gifts, at home. And then when we moved, I didn't take any of those, or I had gotten rid of them or whatever. I didn't have that. And then we were invited on a Friday. I didn't have a gift in my stock. So there is a certain, is it, again, I believe you, like, I don't want stuff but a certain amount of stock or when I will need it, because I know I will need it. What do you think of that?
So I'm not a fan of the gift room. Mostly because I find that it's really impersonal. And I think that you should give a gift to someone that you know that they will want it, not just something generic, like something thoughtful that you picked out for them. If I was in that situation where I needed a gift at the last minute and I couldn't pick something up, I would send flowers the next week.
Okay, fair.
Like, there's always an alternative. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so appreciative of what you did. Thank you so much. I'm sending you flowers. I mean, you don't have to tell them, but like, I appreciate you. Here you go. I don't think the gift has to be like instantaneous, number one. I think, again, it's the being stuck in the being perfect. And I am a recovering perfectionist, so I totally get it. Like, I am always trying to do things perfectly. And sometimes I'm like, nope, I don't need to. I just don't, it can be good enough and nobody's going to care.
Okay, so
As
I'm
long
hearing
as
that you don't need that stock of gifts, or that, I mean, a couple ribbons. I mean, you don't go out and buy a ribbon every time. Like, if the roll is not used, you're not throwing it out.
no,
Yeah.
of course not. If I get a ribbon from someone, I have a small box where I keep ribbons and I reuse them. I keep the bags from the Mishloach Manot from one year to the next and I reuse them and I give them. Nobody knows. And like, people spend so much time on the themes and I totally get that. And it's a really good way to like show your creativity. But at the same time, it's very wasteful. It's very time consuming. And it takes the joy out of the mitzvah in a certain extent because you're like very much obsessed with the perfection of the theme and everything needing to look the same. Nobody's going to know if they get a different one from somebody else.
Of course.
You know, so I always reuse them and I do it really simply. And I give a great mishloach manot. I think I give a challah and a bottle of wine and some hamantashen and some fruit. That's it. I don't give anybody who comes to my Suda, and a lot of people come to my Suda, and it's great. And I fulfill the mitzvah like joyfully. And sometimes we lose track of that with the just in cases and the like needing to always keep up with the Cohens.
Then what I'm hearing is that you do have this box of your amount of bags and ribbons and stuff. So you're not considering that in a just in case category. You know that you're going to be using them, so you do have them.
It's not, to me, that's not just in case, and I'll tell you the difference. Because I know the situation is coming.
Okay.
Do you see the difference? I know that Purim is going to come next year. Just as I have faith that I'm going to wake up in the morning, I know that Purim is going to come and I can save the mishloach manot bags for next year and not throw them away and reuse them. And I can have faith that that happens. But I will say this about that, which is the reason that I can do that is because I know where they go in my house. If you ask me to get them, I can be back here within 1 minute, exactly with all of them, knowing exactly where everything is. I don't have to search for them. I can easily pull them out of the storage room. I know exactly where they are. What I find is that a lot of people will save these things, not remember that they saved them, and then not know where they put them and not be able to reuse them. And so each year they'll save them and they can't reuse them. So the key here is if you're going to save, great. You have to give everything in your house a place to live. And you have to know where everything is. And in order to do that, you have to curate your best collection of stuff so that you have the mental capacity to remember where everything is. Because if you have too much stuff, you're never going to remember where everything is.
Then going back to my ribbons, it's having a little small collection of ribbons to wrap my gifts is not a just in case. It's convenient to have.
Yeah, there is a level of convenience you can have. How much do you need? Not a lot. Enough, right? And I don't go out and buy new stuff. I'm reusing what someone already gave me, which is also a big difference. I come from a slightly different viewpoint than most people. So I grew up religious, but I very much have adapted the low waste lifestyle, which is very, very hard when you're religious. It's super hard, especially if you live in an urban area, because one of the most wasteful things that we have, surprisingly, is food. And you would think, like, based on, the Baal Tashlit commandment, that we wouldn't have a lot of food waste. But I don't mean like food going bad. I just mean like chicken bones and peelings and things like that. Because when you have a family of 5+ and you are cutting up several watermelons, let's say in a week, there's a lot of food scraps happening, right? So that actually makes up a lot of trash. When we lived in New York, we were going through, like, I would say 10 to 12 bags of trash a week. Since we moved to Israel and we've been able to compost, we've been able to reduce to like 1, maximum 2 per week, which is a huge savings. So I try to do things with low waste in mind. So I'm always trying to see like what I could reuse or recycle. And a lot of times things like ribbon or bags, they're just not recyclable. But I keep a small collection because I know I can reuse them. It's not a just in case. I know these will get reused, and I actually really reuse them. So for example, when we buy bread in a bag, I save the bag, and when I make challah, I put it in the bag and I put it in the freezer, let's say. Right. So I'm reusing those things. So I'm producing less, or I'm trying to produce less waste, which a lot of people are like, well, how do you stay organized if that's happening? And the reason is because, again, curated collection of stuff. I'm only saving the things that are really the best that I know I'm going to use, like in the coming weeks. Like I know I'm baking challah every week and or every other week, and I'm putting in the freezer 1 week. So I know that I can reuse this bag, right? Like I know that that's happening. But there's a limit to what you actually know. That's the thing that we hope for, and it's probably going to happen. But the just in case scenario, like I have 10 handbags and I might go to a party where I need 2 that look like this, that's probably not going to happen, right? So it's about being honest about what practically could happen and what's actually like possible in reality.
Okay, so then here's another question, and then I really want to talk about our big curation, like getting rid of a lot of stuff. But let's say at the end of a party and you have 6 paper plates, and I'm not into paper plates, but let's say when you're making a big party, 6 Hanukkah paper plates left. So to throw them out, it costs money, and they're perfectly fine paper plates, but I'm not gonna use them again next year Hanukkah because I'm only gonna have 6 of them.
Right, but why wouldn't you just use them when you need a paper plate that's regular?
You can, right, but so I've seen people's collections of leftovers.
It doesn't mean that you need to.
You can eat it with the watermelon in July.
Yeah, who cares?
It's not saving everything just because. But on the other hand, also when you're having, let's say, a party, use the same. If you're using plastic, use the same over and over again. I'm not the same ones, but the same style over and over again. So when you have 40 and the 40 left from a previous bag, and then 10 left and 6 left, and
like one time you use lots of bowls but no salad plates, let's say, and you have lots of salad plates left over. If next time you need the salad plates and you bought a matching set, it would go together.
Okay, so let's talk about the stuff that we have over many years. Let's say even if 1 house or 3 houses, I think that if you're in there for X amount of years, you have stuff, And let's just talk about our own stuff, but I do want to talk about having our kids' stuff in our house. So I want to make sure we cover those two things.
I think it's also really important at this stage to talk about your parents' stuff.
Okay.
Because that's also a problem for a lot of people, but let's go one step at a time. Okay. When you want to lose weight, let's say you lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 100 pounds. Doesn't really matter how much you use. You don't want to gain that weight back, right?
Right.
Okay. So what do you have to do to keep the weight off?
Maintain.
Yes. Right. Clutter is the same thing. If you are not vigilant about things coming into your home and your buying and your consumerism, then no matter when you decluttered or how often you decluttered, the stuff will always come back because it takes maintenance to maintain decluttering. One time I went to a client and she's like, look, I have 5 bags for you. And I'm like, okay, let's go declutter in the closet. She's like, no, I just gave you 5 bags from my closet. And I'm like, no, let's go do your closet. And she's like, but I did the closet. Here's 5 bags for you to take away. And I'm like, just humor me and let's go into the closet. And when we really were honest and we looked through it, we were able to get rid of 10 more bags. And so people think that like decluttering is just like, I'll take out a few pieces here and there and, oh, I did it already, but they're not brutally honest, number one. And so it's really hard to maintain any organizational successes if you're not brutally honest with actually what you're using. But the thing about it is that it actually takes time to get to that stage where you've decluttered in a very honest way. So the same way you would lose 1 pound a week to be healthy versus losing 10 pounds for 3 weeks, if you want to reach a 30-pound goal, the same thing is with clutter. Like if you want to actually make sure it gets out of your life, you're going to have to take several looks at it just because it takes time for you to work that honesty muscle, that decluttering muscle that's been so inactive for so many years because you're like, well, I have the space, so I'll just keep it, right? Or I can't bear to part with it even though I don't use it anymore. So you really have to be honest and you really have to do it over and over and over again and make it something that you feel comfortable with, or else it's very, very difficult to actually make real progress in decluttering.
Okay,
so that's number one. You always have to go through it frequently.
Okay. First, I think it's like slowly get used to the idea of getting rid of stuff. Because if you spend so much money and so much time finding it, and so it's hard. I think there's an emotional piece to it.
Right. So I always tell people to start with low-hanging fruit. Socks, underwear, things that are not in good condition and you don't like. I really don't understand why people have so many issues like getting rid of underwear with like elastic stretched out or holes in it or socks that are stretched out. If you have something that is not in good condition and you wouldn't wear, then don't keep it. And if you need to buy something new, but don't keep those old things that you're not going to use. The same is true with clothes. Anything that has a hole in it that you won't repair, but you're not wearing, let it go. And the thing is, people are like, well, I'm holding on to it just in case. And I'm like, even if just in case came, would you pick out that sweater with a hole in it? Like, would you actually wear it out? No, because it has a hole in it, right? Or it's not flattering on you. You wouldn't actually wear it. So holding on to it just for an emergency is not useful. Let's be real. We have enough stuff in our closets that we have enough for in case of emergency. Okay. We don't need to hold on to that one thing that isn't good just in case because we're worried. No, those are the things to start with and let go first.
And don't use them as a schmata or a rag. Just get rid of them.
How many do you need? I get it if you have an outfit or even 2 outfits that you wear when you're cleaning, like if you're cleaning with bleach or something like that, that I totally get. But why do you need 7? Here's the thing. This is a little bit of a tangent, so I apologize, but I think it's worth saying. We get a limited amount of decisions every day. Studies show that we're allowed to make 3,500 decisions every day before we have no more mental capacity to make decisions, before we get worn out, okay? If you're spending a lot of your time looking for certain things in your closet because things that you don't need are blocking the view, then you are wasting valuable decision-making capacity. And at the end of the day, that's why you're so tired, because you have just wasted significant brain power looking for what you actually don't want, or looking through what you actually don't want, right? So if you clear out, if you spend the time up front, which is definitely an exhausting endeavor, okay? I'm not going to say that it's not exhausting to spend several weeks decluttering your house. I know that it is. But if you do, the payoff is very, very great. And the reward is not only that you know where all the things in your house are, that you know exactly what you have, and that it's easy to find what you need when you need it. And all those things combined means that you make fewer decisions in the course of the day and you are less tired at the end of the day, which who doesn't want that?
It's like when you're traveling and you have only whatever you have in your suitcase. And so you
Yes.
don't
Isn't
have
it
too
better?
many choices. It's so much easier.
Right. Right. It's so easy. And we think that more is better, but actually it's not. And I very much encourage people, especially at this age, to have a capsule wardrobe, which is like a select amount of pieces, 30 or 40 pieces that all match with each other. This way, in the morning, it's very, very easy to get up, get dressed, decide what you want to wear. And in fact, most influential people do this. If you think about people like Mark Zuckerberg, President Obama, Diane von Furstenberg, Carolina Herrera, like even fashion designers do this because it means that they can save their decision-making capabilities for things that are more important. And they always look good because they've curated this collection of clothing that's amazing. But instead of shopping all the time, they shop, every season, and they buy what they need for the season and they wear it out. There's this misconception that we need like 100 pieces to get us through a season, but we could just wear out one season's worth of clothes, get rid of it, and get the next season. And I know that people are like, well, I hate shopping and it takes so much, but actually in the long run, again, this is less time intensive than trying to accumulate a lot of pieces so that you never have to go shopping.
Well, I think just also to add to that is that some people don't like to go shopping, but they are trying to get less expensive things, but they take so many shopping trips. And if you think about time as money, then just spend a little bit more and get the shopping done. And then you have all this time
Yeah.
to be with family or to make more money or to whatever, but just get the shopping done.
You nailed it. That's it. Exactly. I very much encourage people to buy the best brands that they can afford. Actually, the truth is, though, I have the most fun thrifting.
Well, that's a whole
I
different mentality.
that's a whole different thing. It's true. And there are categories of clothes that I will only buy new, like socks, underwear, leggings, I will only buy new. But this thrifted, like my skirt is thrifted.
You can find some
Sorry, I
very
realized.
unusual things that are not in the stores now by thrifting. So that's so much fun in itself.
Yeah,
It's
but that's the thing. That's where you can show your real style. But that being said, I get that it takes time to go thrifting, but no more time than it does to sort through the racks on TJ Maxx or Marshalls.
or even in a boutique. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I think what people sometimes forget is that we don't need more to make us happier, but we think like, oh, I need more. Go through your closet, curate the best collection of your clothing. I promise you, you will feel satisfied. And if something happens to that piece, when something happened to this shirt, I'll go ahead and get another shirt similar to this, or maybe a different color. I don't know, but I'll have the same number of pieces. And that's key. So I think all together, winter clothes, summer clothes, my coats, my gloves, my scarves, everything all together. I counted once. I had between like 300 and my shoes. I had like 350 pieces to 400 pieces, which sounds like a lot. But actually, when you consider each pair of socks, each underwear, each bra, that I have workout clothes, and all the winter gear, it's actually not that many pieces. And I challenge you to see like how many things that you actually have. Most of the bulk of it was coming from pieces like scarves, where that's where I choose to express my individuality, because I cover my hair with a scarf, and so I can wear more plain clothes. And then in order to make it special, I'll change up the scarf. And actually that makes getting dressed super easy in the morning. I'm just thinking about it less, and I can focus on helping people more. Okay, so I think I answered the first question,
So that's the
but now
clothing.
I need
And
to answer the second question.
I want to talk about, let's say, keeping,
Kids.
as we get older, keeping toys or keeping kids stuff or books for when the grandchildren will come, whether we have
Okay.
grandchildren or, like, for example, a beautiful silver cross carriage. Now, it's
Right.
beautiful and it's comfortable, and I think that my children would love to see what they had and would love to put their children into this beautiful, good condition silver cross carriage. What are your thoughts on that?
So there's a couple thoughts that I have about this. The first is, if you have boys, you have to contend with daughters-in-law, and you never know what they will want. And even if your son wants something, obviously if your daughter-in-law doesn't, that's a veto right away. That's number one. Number two is, there's two dynamics here. First of all, it has to be a shared family value that things that are new are not necessarily better. It also depends on how something was maintained, because some people think like, I'm going to save this for my grandchildren, and that's great. But if your basement has some mold problem, don't save anything, because the chances of it actually being in good condition are very slim. That being said, if you can really maintain it in a way that is useful, great. But my real problem with doing things like that is it puts a demand on resources. And if you're not going to use something for 20 years, first of all, there's no guarantee that after 20 years, it will be in good condition. You don't know what's going to happen. I have a client, and she and I spent a lot of time and a lot of money organizing her kids' clothes. Now she has a boy and a girl, and her kids are sort of close in age, but she doesn't have anybody else. And she was saving all of the clothes, like from, at this point, her kids were like 8 and 10, right? And she's saving all of their old clothes for her sisters. And they don't have big houses, so she's thinking like she's going to do it. And we spent, I said, are you sure you want to do this? This is crazy. If you want to, just pass it to them. And she's like, no, they don't have the space. I have the space. So we did. So we stored it in a way that was good. And we sorted everything. And then she had a big flood in her basement, and she didn't know about it. And like, she was away, she got black mold all over everything, and everything had to be thrown out. And this is a very good example of like saving things for the just in case. Even if you save things in great condition, maybe Hashem has other plans for you or for the stuff. So while I can appreciate wanting to save things for your grandkids, again, it needs to be a select item of a select curated collection of things. It doesn't need to be everything. And I think we need to try to pass on the things that we're not using to those who need them sooner, because sometimes it's not our job to hold on to them. Sometimes we're just the messenger. And I think that I think if you frame your possessions and through the lens of tzedakah, I think it's a lot easier to let it go. Because when you reframe it into this lens and you look at it like, I'm here to do God's will. God gave me this bracha. I no longer need this bracha anymore. I'm going to pass it on to someone else who needs the bracha. And by the way, it's not your responsibility to find that person who needs the bracha. Hashem can do anything. He can find the person who needs the bracha. So don't worry about getting it to the right person. Get it to like an organization and let them be responsible for it. Even if it's not a Jewish organization, we don't know who we're supposed to be delivering the package to. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't. And we can let Hashem manage that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is like, just be sensible about what you're saving and why you're saving it, and if it's really going to be functional by the time it's going to be used, and if it matches the
Right.
personality of your daughter, never mind your son or your daughter-in-law that you don't know. But like, if it makes sense, if your whole family is very nostalgic and it's a nostalgic vibe in the house, then maybe you should save it. But if
Maybe.
it's really, if you're not nostalgic about things and you're just saving because it's going to be practical, and then maybe not save it. Maybe let someone use it for the next 15 years that'll get a life somewhere else.
Even if
And
you lend it to somebody, and know that if you lend it to somebody, be okay with that. You might not get it back in the condition that it was, and that's fine because you did your part. That's tzedakah too.
and also, just to say, there's some car seats and some cribs and whatever lose their car seats, they actually expire, whatever that means. And some cribs, some of the older cribs are not considered safe anymore. And
So that's the other thing. Safety ratings change over time. Also, we have toys that we assume are safe right now, but over time, we might find out that they're not safe. So let them go. Like, paint toys from the 60s and 70s oftentimes have like lead paint in them. Obviously, we don't want babies to put toys with lead paint in their mouth. That's very unsafe. So figure out, like, if you think that this is worthwhile, save it, but probably not. I'll be honest. So my kids I have twins who are almost 16 and an almost 18-year-old. And obviously we don't really use toys anymore. My kids decided that they wanted to sell all their Legos, which was great. I think we sold everything but 2 or 3 sets, and they got rid of most of their other toys. The toys that I saved were Magnetiles, a box of Duplos, a set of trains, and a select few pieces like baby gear. We have guests often enough that those come in handy. Oh, and I saved a portable high chair that folds up like really small, like the size of a small box. That to me is enough. When I have grandkids, Bezrat Hashem, I will get something new because someone is always going to be giving something away. Someone is always going to, or I'll have the money to buy it again. And I know that that seems wasteful, or buy it secondhand, right? Like, there's always going to be a way you can get what you need. And this is the biggest problem that I see with decluttering is people are always like, yes, I believe Hashem can do anything, right? And then we get worried that we're not going to have enough stuff, or that we won't have what we need, or that we won't have the resources that we need to buy something later. One of the transformational things for me personally is shifting that idea in my head. I can let things go because I believe that Hashem can do anything and that I will have what I need when I need it. And that is a very big shift. And it takes a lot of practice and positive affirmations to get to that space. I will not say that I am perfect at that all the time. And I will not say that I never say to myself, oh, that'll come in handy just in case, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I never say that, because sometimes I do. But when I say that to myself, I'm like, meh, Hashem can do anything. If I need it again, I'll get it again. I can pass it on to someone who needs it. And if you know me, someone, like, all the time, people will be like, oh, I really love this. I'm like, great, you can have it. Like, I had this collection of teacups and my friend was really admiring it, and she knew that she would never, or she didn't think she could ever really buy anything like that in Israel. I'm like, you want them? You got them. They're yours. And I gave them to her. And I'm not saying this because I'm great. I'm saying this because I believe that I have what I need. And if someone feels like they need something that I have, then I can reframe it for myself as if I'm the messenger and I can share with you my bracha.
I guess
And
you
it takes,
were using them often enough that you were going to miss them in your life.
right. So, and this is a good segue into stuff that we inherit from family, right? These were a collection of cups that my great aunt had collected, and they were beautiful and I loved them. There was one that I loved more than any, and I used it all the time. But I also had the set from my china, like from what I got for my wedding, right? So I said, you know what? That's okay. I have another set. I have enough. I am so abundant and blessed. I can pass this on to you. I don't need it. And even though it was nice, I know that it's better for those objects to be used than to sit in my cupboard looking pretty. and
Before
not
we
being
jump
used.
into the inheritances, I want to talk about when they had a larger family and they used to go to Costco and they're used to buy in bulk and they're still buying in bulk and it's just sitting there for a longer time. Was
Food
that, and there's room for it. It's not, but or for some people, there's no room for it. Let's
specifically?
talk about this buying in bulk when you don't need it so much.
Okay, but food specifically?
Food or even like toilet paper. I mean, it just sits there for months and months when you're buying 36 rolls. What do you think? Should we still be buying in that way to save a few dollars?
Okay.
Or
So if you're buying a thing of toilet paper and you only bought one and you wait till you use it before you buy a second one, fine. Probably you have more than one bathroom and you can parse it out between the bathrooms and that's fine. I think that there's a couple of factors that go into buying in bulk. Certainly food, if you're two people now in your house or you have transient kids in the house, certainly buying that amount of food, like when you had a family of 6 and now you're just 2, is not a good idea because the food can go bad before you get a chance to use them. And that's baltashlit. That just to save a few dollars, the food waste doesn't seem worth it. There is an idea of preparedness. And I very much understand the need to want to be prepared, but you have to watch yourself because there's a balance between preparedness and hoarding. So you have to look and see if you can find the balance between being prepared and having because you're again. So it's very important to examine in the first place. If you are in a kind of situation where like maybe you don't have access to a lot of things all at once and you have some space to do things, then it's worth it to sort of purchase in planning. So what I mean by that is if you like make it your thing, you only go to Costco once a month, let's say, then you should buy enough to get you to your next trip.
Okay.
But only if you could actually reasonably use it. So toilet paper is probably a yes that you would use it. And maybe on your next trip, you don't even need to buy toilet paper, but 16 cans of tomato sauce, maybe not, because how often do you use it? So it requires you to take a hard look at what you're actually doing. A lot of things we do just out of rote, this is not a good reason to continue doing them just because that's the way we've always done them. When our situations change, we need to change the things that go into them. That is a time management problem. Because usually what it's coming from is no meal planning, no planning whatsoever. And so there's that. Now, there are things that I buy, for example, when I go to America, let's say, I buy certain vitamins because they're much cheaper than in Israel. And I will buy enough so that I can reasonably get to when I know my father is coming for a visit. And then I can send him a box and he'll bring me a box. But I very much understand that there's, especially over the last few years, there is a possibility that he might not come. He might not be able to enter the country or something might happen, right? Like where travel is not allowed. And in that case, I will buy whatever is here and I'll be okay with that because I would rather not store it for that just in case. I would rather have the faith that I will always get what I need when I need it. Because if you start going down that road where it's like, I'm going to start buying because I don't know when he's going to come, right? Then you go down a slippery slope of the fine line between hoarding and being prepared, but also emuna and not having emuna, or whatever the opposite of that is. Like there is a fine line between where you're doing hishtadlut, there we go, where you're doing hishtadlut, where you're doing your part versus believing that you'll always have what you need. And if
Okay.
you can't get something, maybe you can't get something. And if something costs more later on, great, then I'll have the money later on, right? And it's a mindset shift. And that's a really, really, really important shift. And it's hard. It's super hard.
And I think it's the same thing of like buying because it's on sale now, so I'm going to buy a few. And how much are you really saving? And then you're storing it for a long time because it was on sale 8 months ago.
Okay, so if you are a meal planner and you know that every single week you use 3 jars of tomato sauce and it's on sale and it's going to be on sale again in 8 weeks, which a lot of people like crack that, supermarket cycle and they know like when it's going to be on sale. And if you know that over the next 8 weeks, you will use 25 jars and you have space to store 25 jars, go ahead and buy them. That makes sense because that's not hoarding. That's, in my mind, that is, I am preparing myself for the next 8 weeks because it's a specific timeline with an end date. It's the same way why we would prepare 3 weeks in advance for Pesach, like why we might turn over our kitchen earlier, or part of our kitchen earlier to start preparing and freezing so we don't have to do it all later, right? I very much understand that mentality, but that's coming from someone who's a planner. And there's a difference between when you've planned for something and when you're holding on to it just in case. If you don't end up using it, okay, you might not end up using it. But do you see the difference? It's very subtle, but there is a difference because the one person is saying, this is my part and I'm doing my part. Here's my plan. If it doesn't work out, you'll do what's best for me. But the other person is saying, I don't know if I'm going to need this, but it's a good price and I'm going to get it just in case, even though I might not use it. And, I feel comfortable taking the resources from somebody else because I might need it. And it comes from a place of lack versus a place of abundance. And that is a very big shift that we need to focus on ourselves is why are we doing something from abundance or from lack?
Okay. I think that's a very important piece of it's the mindset of like, how easy is it for me to get it when I need it? In my head and in financially. But I believing that financially I'll be able to do it.
But you have to take the financial part out of the picture because there is an aspect of how easy will it be for me to get it. Like if you don't have a car and you're relying on public transportation to go shopping every week, then if you see something that you normally use and it's a good price and it's difficult for you to get in general, then that might be worthwhile. To me, that seems like hishtadlut. But it's a very fine line of how much is hishtadlut and how much is not.
Okay. Is there a question we should ask like we can ask ourselves to see where it's coming from? Like what is the need for this to make this purchase?
I think you can ask yourself, like, is this coming from a place of abundance or a place of lack? Like, am I worried that I won't have it again? Do I believe that Hashem will give this to me again? If I believe that, then maybe I can pass it up.
Okay.
Either that I'll have the money or that I'll be able to get the thing. There is, though, a certain level of, again, so this is this specific issue is a cross between time, is like a bordering into the time management issue. How much time am I willing to spend going to get this thing again? So for example, if tomato sauce goes on sale and you know you always use it, and then you're not going to have to go shopping for this item for a few weeks, that's a big deal because that's going to save you a lot of time, but only if you've planned that.
Right. Okay.
Right. Or if you see a really good way to do it is if you've planned your menus, like let's say for Pesach, a month before Pesach, and you start to see those things on sale, yes, buy them when you see them. It evenly distributes the budget. You know you're planning on using them, right? And you can take advantage of the sale because we know that this is a temporary storage solution or problem, right? And once Pesach is over, the problem will be resolved. And anyways, you probably didn't have enough storage for Pesach anyways. So like, or maybe you did, but I never have enough room for Pesach because the turnover. So that like, ask yourself, frame it in that scenario. If I was doing this like 4 weeks in advance, like I'm planning out something for something specific, would I do this? Yes, then do it. If not, no.
Okay. I think we spoke enough about that. I want to talk about our kids' stuff living in our house because our kids' apartments are smaller. They moved out. They moved out, and we still have their kindergarten report cards, whether because we thought that they would want it, or maybe there are things that they want, like their snowboard, which they can't fit in their apartment, but we have space for it. So there's two different things here, but I want to talk about the kids' stuff in our house.
Okay. So the kids' stuff in our house. Okay. When you curate your best collection of things, you do your kids a chesed. When you let go of all the things that you don't need in your house, that means that your kids don't have to go through it when you die. You should live to be 120. But let me just tell you from personal experience, having to go through those piles of paperwork just to see if there's anything there that needs to be shredded or, something is not fun. And it's painful, actually. So if you're holding on to all those things because you think your kids might want them, my advice to you is don't. Your kids probably don't care. And if they do, and they're old enough, then pack it up and give them a box and be like, this is your stuff. You do what you want with it. If you want to keep it, great. If you don't want to keep it, don't keep it. I don't care. But it's not my problem anymore. I saved it for you. You're 18. Yalla, bye. I very much look at it from the perspective of an end of life scenario. We can't take this stuff with us. And this is a basic Jewish tenet. We cannot take anything with us, right? So why do we want to leave a legacy of stuff to our kids?
And the work,
mean,
especially at that point, if you have to really empty out their house to sell it or to an apartment, and how much stuff to do at that point of
that's a
their
piece
life.
of debt. But what if chas v'shalom, you need to urgently downsize? Do you know how stressful it is to urgently downsize 20, 30, 40 years of stuff that's junk? But you have to go through the papers because maybe it has your social security number on it, or maybe there's money socked away in it, or maybe there's a piece of tax information because you didn't do good sorting. So I think there's also the component of, was it organized in the first place?
Right.
And then there's the second component of, if it was organized, like, why are you holding on to it for kids? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no benefit to holding on to a kindergarten report card for someone who's 30 with their own kids.
Right.
And if they want it, pass it on to them. Box it, organize it in a way that it's like, this is yours. And for those people who say to me, well, my kids don't have the space, but I do, I say, that's not your problem. You are not getting rent to be a storage unit. If you want to do a chesed for your children, tell them to find a way to deal with it themselves, because being the backup for them is not useful. It's just not. It doesn't teach them how to manage their own things. And I know that sounds really harsh. It sounds really harsh. I'll just make a distinction, by the way. But there's a distinction between saving like kindergarten papers and artwork and like childhood memories versus if your kids come to your house a lot and they leave like a small stash of clothes or a toothbrush or things like that. There's a big difference between those things. For example, we go to my father like once a year. I leave a pair of sneakers and a couple of tops there and a couple like urgent things that I might need there. It's literally like a small section of the closet, like, 3 feet by 3 feet. It's not taking a lot of space. I do it because it's easier for me in terms of packing, which means I can travel a little bit later. And my dad has a totally empty house because now I emptied it all out. If you don't have an empty house, though, that could be very, very difficult for you. And so either you empty it out and you give your kids that space, and then they know this closet is their closet. But to have everything intermingled is not good. So if you want to give your kids a space, give them a small space. And whatever they can fit in this space is fine. But that's it. That's their space. That's their stuff. You don't touch it. You don't go there. You're responsible for the rest of your stuff.
So like one space, like if you want to have it in the back of your garage, you want to let your kids put their snowboards, things like that, because their Brooklyn apartment doesn't have space for it, but you have a room in your garage. It's that one space, not like the snowboard here and their other, and their other things in another space. Like just
you can have this much space, whatever you can fit there, that's fine. Anything past that makes you be like a storage unit. And why do you have to carry that burden? And I know you can say, but I have the space, I have the space. Again, let's go back to what Pirkei Avos says. More possessions, more worry, right? The more we are responsible for, the more we are responsible for. And why do you want more responsibility? And what happens? Like, what happens if something happens in your house? Then it's your problem.
Oh, it's sort of your problem. But let's say if it starts flooding and you go into your basement to save your stuff, and then there's also your kids' stuff that you're saving or not saving, or
it makes things more difficult. And I don't see the benefit to encourage the consumerism in that way. If you want to own this product, you have to find a space for it in your life. If it's that important to you, then it needs to have a piece of real estate in your space, or at least that you pay for. Do you know what I mean? Like, because when you give something a real home, you are saying, I value you. You are important to me. I need you. Even though it's not something that we're speaking to, right? But I am grateful for this bracha that Hashem gave to me. I'm going to give it a place so that when I'm looking for it, I can find it. Number one, when I need it, I'll know where it is. But also because I'm showing respect to this item because I'm grateful that I have it. And it's so easy to make a Target run or get an Amazon delivery or an Instacart, right? It's so easy to get things, and they lose their value over time. And we think like, it's okay. There's more, right? But we never let go of the things from before. And we're always focused on the more and more and more. We don't respect the boundaries of our physical space.
until it
And that's a
explodes in your
problem.
face.
Right. When you can't find anything, or there's a flood or a hurricane and everything's destroyed. I don't know. I have this weird fascination with natural disasters. And I look at like the pictures afterwards and I feel devastated for those people, because I can imagine, I've seen the situations like in real time where you have to clean up from a flood or fire, right? And then I look at like when a hurricane rips through Florida or the Gulf Coast, and I'm like, I like literally cry for those people, because I see them looking at their belongings, feeling crushed. And I understand the attachment that we have to our belongings. I really, really do. But I always wonder, if you just would have had less stuff, would this situation be easier for you? I don't mean this to be, political in any way, but obviously I live in Israel and we have, not natural disasters right now, but we have other things going on. And this is a question that I pose to the members of my group often. I say, if you had 1 minute to run to the shelter, what would you grab? The things that I would grab are my kids, my laptop, and my phone. That's it. And that says a lot to me, right? Because that means that pretty much everything else I have, I can replace. And like, these are the two more, I would grab the keys.
Right.
Because you need to unlock the shelter. But outside of that, like, that says a lot to me. My whole business, my whole life runs on my computer and my phone. If I don't have that, I have no business, right? So those are the two things I'm going to grab in the case of an emergency. If I had more time to evacuate, the truth is I could get all of my clothes into one duffel bag very, very quickly. Every single thing that I own, I could get into one duffel bag fast. And like, if we had to evacuate in an hour, I would not feel bad. I would not feel like I'm missing out on anything. I know where all my stuff is. I would grab my clothes. I would grab my laptop. I would grab our papers, like our important documents, and that's it. I will go.
So I want to wrap up because we have so much we can talk about, but I want to talk about, I know where my stuff is, because as midlife or older, we sometimes forget period, where our stuff is. So anything about where to put your things so that you are likely to remember where your stuff is.
So when you declutter, that's going to be the number one thing that's going to help you, because it's going to be, the zones of things are going to be more clear. But the key that I always say, especially if you live with other people, label things. Just label where things go, and then it makes it easier for everybody in the house. I find that like in my kitchen, not everything is labeled, and my kids are always like, but I don't know where it goes. And I'm like, yes, you do. But sometimes they don't. It's not something that we use a lot, or they don't use it and they've not seen it, right? So they don't always know where it goes. Labeling it.
So labeling, but like Actually, what I used to do is like things that are seasonal go in the seasonal section. Then within the seasonal section or the holiday seasonal section, and then the things that are a little bit more organized. But you know that that belongs seasonal. Like it's sort of I knew where all my holiday things were. It's not as if my Hanukkah things are in one place and my Purim things are in another part of the basement. Like everything was just. I tried to be organized about it, but I want to be able to tell someone, go to the basement. It's over there, 2 shelves in, and that's where you'll find it.
And can you do that?
So I was able to, but now like just recently we moved, so things don't have an exact spot yet. And like I was just thinking, where is our portable grill? And I couldn't find it. And
Okay, so one thing that I always tell people is when you're sorting items and when you're storing items, the like items have to go together. So like items mean different things to different people. For example, there are things that I would classify as tools that you might not classify as tools. So people, you know, those little felt things that go under chairs, right?
Right.
I say store those in the toolbox because that makes sense to me. But for a lot of people, they think that they should store that in the dining room in the one place where that's the only place they would use them. If that makes sense to you, then do that. There are no hard and fast rules because everybody's mind functions in a different way. It's just you have to think about where you would use them. Now, one thing that I find helps a lot of people if you have trouble remembering things or if you're having trouble setting up that system for yourself is make an Excel spreadsheet where you can use the search function. So say exactly where you stored it. Felt pads are in the break front next to in the dining room in the top drawer on the right. And like make one column for the item and one column for the location. But I think you'll find if you actually declutter, you will be able to really see the distinct categories in every location. That doesn't mean that you won't have to organize them again. It just means that once you let go of the excess, it's easy to create a system and it's easy to maintain the system.
I think it's also like focus, like when you're actually putting it someplace, like have an intention of why you're putting it there. It has to make sense, not just because that box fits there. There's a little space left. I'd rather have, like for myself, when I have a
Right.
big basement, I'd rather have empty space in the seasonal than put something that doesn't belong there. Like that's
Correct. I agree with you 100%. I think that it has to have a zone. If the stuff for holidays goes in one zone and the stuff for like outdoor grilling is in another zone, that's fine. They can be next to each other if you want them to be, but they should be separated. And you shouldn't try to force the overflow. In fact, this is a big issue when people are moving, where they like start to like stuff things in like with other categories. Like they'll put in like, right, like in the kitchen, they'll take all the things that might have been also like in the basement, like the leftovers, you know, the dregs, kilo,
you can make
and they'll like stuff them.
we moved. I made 2 boxes of random stuff that I'll eventually figure out where to put.
If it's called the box, fine. But like if you have a specific category of like pots and pans, and then there's some other miscellaneous thing in them, you might not know that you put the miscellaneous thing in with the pots and pans. That's where it becomes a problem.
Right. So this is fabulous. We can talk about so many more things like moving and downsizing and things like that. But this is like a really good overview of really focusing, decluttering, the benefits of decluttering, how to think about what to. So I think this has really been a great conversation. So thank you so much. Anything about BalaganBeGone? How people can reach you? Let's talk about that.
Great. So you can reach me at balaganbegone.com. And there you can join my Journey to Organization, which is an online group decluttering program where I don't lecture at you. We just set the clock and we declutter for an hour at a time until we can make a difference. And what I've found is that online decluttering is actually more effective than in-person decluttering, usually because it's at small bursts, but also because it teaches you to realign your habits and make them more effective and make better systems for yourself. So instead of me doing all the work for you where you're not really learning, you do the work for you and you learn. And also when your family sees that you're doing the work, they jump on the decluttering train with you. This is less imperative if you have bigger kids, but the truth is that when you have bigger kids and they see that you're making a change, it helps them make changes in their life too, even if it's not specifically related to organization. So you can find me again at balaganbegone.com and I would love to have you join the Journey to Organization. For any of your members who would like to try out a session with me, you can use the code Midlife24, and that will be good to September 1st to try out a session and see if I'm a good fit for you, if you're a good fit for the program, and if you like it. All you have to lose really is clutter. And, you just set aside 1 hour of your time, and all you have to lose is clutter.
Thanks so much, Rebekah. I learned so much. I'm going to go evaluate the stuff I have. So that's
Amazing.
Evaluate. All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining me in another fascinating conversation about midlife. If you'd like to reach me, Devora Krasniansky, to talk about your midlife or anything else, you can reach me at jewishmidlife@gmail.com, and follow us at Jewish Midlife on Instagram and Facebook, and join us in our conversations in our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Jewish Women Talk About Midlife.